Yo guys, Bhuvan here. And today we're diving into a story from way back, during a time of war between the Prussians and the French. Imagine this. Beautiful French countryside, birds chirping, but a heavy tension in the air. Yeah, things were about to change, and not in a good way. The war wasn't just about battles and borders, it was about something much deeper, identity. And what better represents identity than language, right? Our main man, Franz, was just another kid who'd rather be catching tadpoles. He loved the feel of the cool water on his hands, the thrill of the chase, and the joy of holding a tiny, wriggling creature in his palm. The world outside was his playground, full of adventures waiting to be had, then cramming verbs. Can you blame him? School can be a drag, especially when you're dreading those pesky participles. The endless pages of grammar exercises, the monotonous drone of the teacher's voice, and the pressure to get everything right, it was enough to make any kid's head spin. Franz often found himself daydreaming, his mind wandering to the streams and ponds he loved so much. On this particular day, Franz was extra reluctant to go. The warm sunshine, the chirping birds, everything seemed to be conspiring against him. The world outside was so inviting, so full of life and color. Every step towards the school felt like a step away from freedom. He dragged his feet, his heart heavy with the thought of the day ahead. But he knew he couldn't avoid Monsieur Hamel forever, especially not with the whispers about the war reaching his doorstep. The adults spoke in hushed tones, their faces etched with worry. Franz didn't understand everything, but he knew enough to feel the weight of their concern. The war was like a dark cloud hanging over them, casting a shadow on their lives. Little did he know, this wasn't going to be just another day of school. This day was going to be different, very different. As he walked into the classroom, he felt a strange mix of emotions, apprehension, curiosity, and a hint of excitement. The usual chatter of his classmates was subdued, and Monsieur Hamel's face was unusually solemn. Franz sensed that something important was about to happen, something that would change the way he saw the world and his place in it. This day would be etched in his memory forever, a turning point in his young life. Franz finally dragged himself to school, but what awaited him wasn't the usual chaos. The classroom was unusually quiet. Where was the commotion of desks shuffling, the babble of students, the sharp scolding of Monsieur Hamel? Instead, there was a strange stillness, an eerie silence. Even stranger, the villagers, usually found gossiping in the market square, were seated at the back of the classroom, their faces etched with worry. Franz felt a shiver run down his spine. Something was definitely off. All eyes were on Monsieur Hamel as he entered, his face pale and his demeanor unusually somber. The room fell silent, a stark contrast to the usual chatter and noise that filled the classroom. His usual sternness, which often kept the students in line, was replaced with a strange sadness that seemed to weigh heavily on his shoulders. He wasn't wearing his usual attire either. Instead of his everyday teaching clothes, he had donned something far more formal. Today, he was dressed in his finest clothes, the ones reserved for special occasions, the kind of attire that marked significant moments in life. With a heavy heart, he stood before the class and announced that this would be their last French lesson. The weight of his words hung in the air, almost tangible. The Prussians had won, and from now on, only German would be taught in schools. The implications of this change were profound, altering the very fabric of their daily lives and cultural identity. The news hit Franz like a ton of bricks. He felt a mix of shock, disbelief, and a deep sense of loss. All those times he'd grumbled about French lessons, and now he wouldn't even have the chance to learn his own language. Regret washed over him as he realized the value of what he had taken for granted. The other students shared similar expressions of shock and sorrow. They exchanged glances, each one understanding the gravity of the situation. Monsieur Hamel looked out the window, his eyes distant, as if he was seeing the future that awaited them. A future where their language and culture would be suppressed. Franz glanced down at his notebook, the familiar French words now seeming more precious than ever. He vowed to remember every lesson, every word, and to keep the language alive in his heart. Monsieur Hamel turned to the blackboard and began to write, his hand steady but his heart heavy. The students watched in silence, knowing that this moment was one they would never forget. The atmosphere in the room was thick with emotion, a mix of sadness, regret, and a newfound appreciation for their heritage. This was more than just a lesson. It was a farewell to a part of their identity. As the clock ticked away, each second felt like a countdown to the end of an era. The students and Monsieur Hamel were acutely aware that time was slipping away, taking with it a piece of their history. When the lesson finally ended, the students left the classroom with heavy hearts, each one carrying the weight of the announcement. They knew that their world had changed forever. The classroom, now empty and silent, stood as a poignant reminder of what had been lost. The echoes of their final French lesson lingered in the air, a testament to the enduring power of language and culture. Section 5. Language as Identity. This, my friends, is where it hits hard. Language isn't just a bunch of words, it's a part of who we are. It's the language of our ancestors, the stories of our childhood, the jokes we share with our friends. It's our identity. And here Monsieur Hamel, with tears glistening in his eyes, was telling them that their language, their identity, was being taken away. The villagers, old and young, sat there in stunned silence, the weight of the announcement crushing their spirits. Section 6. Monsieur Hamel's sorrow. You could see the pain in Monsieur Hamel's eyes, a deep, profound sorrow that seemed to weigh heavily on his heart. It was the sorrow of a man who felt like he was failing his students, not just in their education, but in preserving their heritage and identity. He felt the weight of his village's expectations, the hopes of his country resting on his shoulders. He spoke with a passion that was both inspiring and heartbreaking about how French was the most beautiful, the clearest, the most logical language in the world, a language that carried the soul of their nation. He urged his students to never forget it, to hold on to it with all their might, to guard it like a precious treasure, something invaluable that could never be replaced. His voice cracked with emotion as he wrote, "Vive la France." On the blackboard in large letters, each stroke of the chalk filled with a fervent hope and a desperate plea. The students, usually restless and mischievous, sat transfixed, their usual antics forgotten in the gravity of the moment. Their hearts were heavy with a mix of patriotism and regret, a deep understanding of the significance of the day. They clutched their books and flags tightly, as if holding on to the very essence of their identity. Monsieur Hamel looked out of the window, his gaze distant, as if searching for a future where their language and culture would thrive once more. The clock ticked away the final moments of the lesson, each second a reminder of the fleeting nature of time and the importance of their heritage. As the lesson came to an end, the students stood up and saluted, a gesture of respect and a promise to remember. In that moment, there was a silent understanding between teacher and students, a bond forged in the shared love for their language and country. The sun cast a warm glow over the classroom, a symbol of hope and resilience, as they all silently vowed to keep their heritage alive. Section 7. The weight of words. Franz, who normally couldn't wait for the lesson to end, found himself clinging to every word Monsieur Hamel uttered. The letters of the French alphabet, usually just squiggles on a page, suddenly seemed so precious, so full of meaning. He finally understood the importance of his language, his heritage, his identity. He wished he had paid more attention, that he had cherished those moments of learning, of speaking, of simply existing in the comfort of his mother tongue. Section 8. A community united. The classroom, usually a space of learning, had transformed into a sanctuary of shared grief, a place where the villagers, united in their loss, sought solace in the familiar cadence of their language. Even the old Hauser, who had never set foot in a schoolroom before, sat there, his old primer in his hand, his eyes fixed on Monsieur Hamel. In that moment, they were all students, all united by the invisible threads of language and culture, bound together by the shared pain of a profound loss. Section 9. Franz's transformation. Franz, who had started the day as a reluctant student, found himself transformed. The boy who had once dreaded conjugations now felt a newfound appreciation for the complexities and beauty of his language. He realized that language wasn't just about rules and grammar, it was about connection, about belonging, about the very essence of who he was. Section 10. A lesson for life. As the church clock struck 12, signaling the end of the lesson and an era, a profound silence fell over the classroom. Menzel Hummel, his face pale and drawn, stood motionless by the blackboard, his heart heavy with unspoken words. The last lesson isn't just a story. It's a powerful reminder of the importance of our languages, our cultures, our identities. It teaches us to cherish them, to protect them, to never take them for granted, for once lost, they are lost forever. Until next time, guys, stay real, stay you.